Have you ever been called selfish just for wanting a little space to breathe? Because that's exactly what happened to me. I remember Ujia, the tone in my son's voice, the look he gave me. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was disappointment, that quiet, cutting kind. I had just said I was thinking about living on my own again. Nothing drastic, just a small apartment, closer to the park. A place where I could water my plants, listen to my old music without headphones, maybe take my time with coffee in the morning without anyone rushing me. But before I could even finish the sentence, he looked straight at me and said, "You only think about yourself." That moment, it landed like a punch in the chest. Not because I was surprised, no. I had felt it building. Little signs, small comments, but hearing it out loud, that was different. That was the line being crossed. The line where love turns into expectation, and expectation turns into control. And maybe you're hearing this and thinking, she must have done something big to deserve that. But no, I wasn't abandoning anyone. I wasn't turning my back on the family. I was just trying to live as me again. As a woman who, yes, is a mother but who is also still alive inside. Still has desires, routines, a sense of independence that hasn't died just because the hair turned gray. You ever feel that? That invisible wall that rises between you and your own freedom, built slowly by the people who say they love you most. He helps me, yes, drives me to the doctor, brings groceries, checks in, and I'm grateful deeply. But gratitude should never be used to silence someone's voice. Because when you start doubting if you even have the right to want something for yourself, something is very wrong. And the worst part, it wasn't even about the apartment. It was about the message behind the accusation. You only think about yourself wasn't about logistics. It was about control, about fear, about a son who no longer saw me as a full person, but as a responsibility to be managed. And I could see it in his face. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He thought he was protecting me. But love that protects without listening ends up feeling like a cage. I know I'm not the only one. I know there are mothers out there who feel the same, who wonder when their care turned into obligation, who question why, the moment they begin to reclaim their time, their space, their joy, they're met with guilt. You ever feel like that? Like wanting to be yourself again is somehow wrong? Fica comigo até o final, because what you're about to hear might sound familiar. It might even sound like you. What I'm going to share is not just about my story, it's about a truth many of us carry quietly. And what you'll discover now may just shift the way you see the lines between love, freedom, and the silent expectations we carry in family. Now I want to go even deeper into this story. It's strange, isn't it? How one sentence, just a few words, can echo for days inside your chest. After he said I was thinking only of myself, I started questioning everything. Was it wrong to want something that was mine again? Was I being selfish? Or was I finally being honest? I began replaying our conversations in my head, trying to find the point where the roles shifted. When did I stop being his mother and become a woman who needed permission to live? I wasn't chasing anything wild. I just wanted to be me without feeling like I had to justify it. And maybe that's what stings the most. That someone you raised with so much love, who once clung to your hand at the market, could now look at your independence like it's a betrayal. But I know he doesn't mean harm. I know he loves me. That's what makes it even more complicated. I wonder if you've felt this too. That ache of wanting freedom but being afraid it will be misunderstood. That quiet hope to be seen again, not as a burden, but as a whole person. If this speaks to something in your heart, share it with me. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story, your thoughts, your truth, even if it's just one sentence. You'd be surprised how many people are feeling the same thing but think they're alone. When you comment, when you like this video, when you subscribe to this channel, it's not just a button click. It's a way of saying, this matters, these voices matter, and believe me, they do. Your support helps this message reach more people, people who might be sitting in silence, waiting to hear that it's okay to feel this way. So if something here touched you, if you saw a part of yourself or your story reflected in mine, let it be known, not just for me but for every woman who needs to be reminded that her voice still has weight. Now I want to go even deeper into this story. What I wanted wasn't grand, it wasn't outrageous, it wasn't reckless. It was just mine, a small dream, maybe to take a short trip by myself, just to feel the wind on my face without checking with anyone first, or to spend my mornings how I like, without justifying it to anyone. For a moment, I even thought about going back to work part-time. Something light, something just for me. Or maybe even meeting someone new, a companion, a friend, who'd see me not as someone's mother, but as a woman still very much alive. But when I said it out loud, when I dared to share that desire, the reaction hit me like cold water. His face changed, his voice shifted, and what came next was not concern, it was resistance, it was disapproval disguised as care. Suddenly, my wish was treated like a threat, not just to his sense of stability, but to the version of me he had built in his mind, the one that stays, the one that doesn't ask for more. I remember the silence that followed after I said it, that kind of silence that fills a room with judgment without a single word. Then came the sentence, "You're not thinking straight, you're just trying to prove something." And just like that, my freedom was framed as rebellion, as selfishness, as if wanting something for myself meant I was turning my back on them. It's a strange thing. This stage of life, people see the wrinkles, the gray hair, the slower steps and assume you've stopped wanting, that all you long for is comfort and company and quiet. But inside, I was still burning with the same hunger to explore, to grow, to feel joy that was mine alone, not borrowed, not allowed, not supervised. And that's when I realized my freedom had started to bother him, not because it was wrong, but because it challenged his version of control. It meant I wasn't as dependent as he believed. It meant I was still evolving, still making decisions, and that made him uncomfortable. Because when you spend years being needed, you don't always know what to do when the one who needed you starts standing on her own. But here's the truth I've come to understand. Freedom isn't a phase that ends with motherhood. It's not a luxury you earn and then return. It's a part of who you are, like breath, like memory, like voice. And when that freedom is questioned, when it's minimized or dismissed, it doesn't just hurt, it erases you, slowly, piece by piece. I started to notice it in the small things. The way he would hesitate when I talked about going somewhere alone. The way he'd change the subject when I mentioned meeting friends. The way he'd say, "You don't need that," with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. And each time, I shrank a little more, not because I agreed, but because it was easier than explaining myself again. But inside, the desire never left. It sat quietly, like a flame under a glass, waiting for air, waiting for the day I'd choose myself again. Not out of rebellion, not out of anger, but because I finally understood that wanting something of your own doesn't make you selfish, it makes you alive. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject. Comment here. This speaks to my heart. It took me a while to name it. At first, I just thought it was love expressed differently, that maybe I was being too sensitive, too stubborn, too old-fashioned in my thinking. I told myself, he's just trying to help, to make sure I'm safe. But there came a point when that help no longer felt like support. It felt like surveillance. He started to question every little thing. Where are you going? Who's picking you up? Do you really need to spend money on that? At first it sounded like concern, but slowly, it became a checklist I had to pass through, and the worst part, I started adapting to it, editing my words, softening my desires, making myself smaller just to avoid tension. It was subtle at first, but eventually, I realized I had stopped asking for permission a long time ago, and started waiting for approval. There's a fine line between protection and possession, and I don't think he crossed it out of cruelty. I really don't. I think he thought he was doing the right thing, like so many adult children do. They see us aging, and they panic. They want to preserve what they love, but they do it by locking it in a glass box. And that box may be comfortable, but it's not freedom. It's not life. I remember once telling him that I wanted to take a short course at the community center just for fun, something creative, to keep my mind engaged, and he looked at me like I had asked to move across the country. "At your age," he said, half laughing, half concerned. That sentence stayed with me for days. Not because of the words, but because of the message. Your time for dreaming has passed. And I kept wondering, who decided that? Who said we stop evolving just because we've raised our children? I gave my life to motherhood. I poured every ounce of energy into raising him, into making sure he had what he needed. I did it out of love. But love should never be a lifetime contract of submission. It should grow. It should allow room for each person to breathe, even the one who changed the diapers and cooked the meals and wiped the tears for years. What I started to see was that the more I tried to take small steps toward autonomy, the tighter his grip became, not with fists, not with shouting, but with guilt, with soft phrases that cut deep. You don't need all that. You're just restless. You should be grateful for what you have. And with each comment, I felt a little more invisible, a little more like someone who had become a project rather than a person. And when care becomes control, it doesn't feel like love anymore. It feels like being watched through a window you can't open. It feels like smiling while your hands are tied behind your back. And the hardest part is explaining that kind of pain to someone who truly believes they're doing everything right. Because yes, I appreciate the help. Yes, I'm thankful for the rides, for the groceries, for the gestures. But I don't want my gratitude to become a muzzle. I don't want to lose myself quietly in the name of being cared for. I want to feel whole again, to be trusted with my own choices, to be seen not just as someone aging, but as someone still living. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Write down in the comments, I still deserve to choose. I started to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe wanting space, wanting something that belonged only to me at this stage in life. Maybe that was too much, too strange, too inappropriate. The sentence they said, "You're only thinking about yourself," it echoed louder the more I tried to silence it. And I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just carried it quietly, like a stone in my chest that no one else could see. It's strange how guilt works. It doesn't need to shout to control you. It slips into your thoughts gently, dressed as doubt. And soon enough, I was second-guessing everything I felt. Was I wrong to want to travel alone? To enjoy my solitude? Was I wrong for imagining a life that didn't revolve around anyone else's routine but mine? I had always been the dependable one, the nurturer, the safe place. Did wanting something different now make me a stranger to the people I love most? That guilt planted itself like a seed they might not even have meant to plant, but that grew all the same. And every time I tried to talk about how I felt, they'd say, "But we love you," as if love should be enough to erase the need for individuality. As if love, by itself, could replace freedom. They didn't see that love, without respect, can become a burden. That affection, when not balanced with understanding, can turn into control, dressed as concern. I began to shrink myself again. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't want them to think I was ungrateful. So, I stopped talking about my plans. I held back from expressing what made me happy. I started walking through my own house as if it didn't belong to me. And that's the part that stings most, when your own voice starts to sound foreign in the space that should hold your identity. There were nights I stared at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. Wondering if I had asked for too much, or if perhaps this is just the price we pay for getting older, being tolerated but not truly seen. I questioned my own desires, my memories, my worth. And in that quiet war inside me, I was losing pieces of myself. What hurt the most wasn't their disapproval. It was the silence that followed whenever I tried to explain myself, the shift in tone, the polite dismissal, the soft sighs that said, "Here she goes again." They weren't yelling at me, they weren't punishing me, but they had stopped listening. And when someone stops listening to your truth, you begin to doubt whether it matters at all. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because the difference between love and loyalty isn't always clear when guilt has been quietly planted in your soul. Comment below. I still know who I am. I used to choose my clothes with joy, not because they were expensive or stylish, but because they felt like me. A certain color, a pattern, a scarf from a trip long ago, each piece told a part of my story. But slowly, the choices started slipping through my fingers. One day, it was a suggestion, maybe wear something more neutral. Another time, it was a gentle correction. "You already wore that in the last family photo." At first, I didn't resist. I thought, maybe they're just trying to help. But help, when it replaces your voice, is something else entirely. I noticed the same shift with meals. I loved making my tea a certain way, eating at a certain time, enjoying the small rituals that gave rhythm to my day. But when I moved in with them, those things began to vanish. Suddenly, meals had a schedule. My preferences had to fit into someone else's routine. If I asked for something different, there was always a subtle pause, just long enough to make me feel like a burden. So I started saying less, asking less, just to keep the peace. Even television, the little escape at night, changed. I used to watch old comedies or romantic dramas, things that made me laugh or feel something familiar. But now, the remote was rarely in my hand. They'd put something on and say, "You'll like this," without asking. And most times, I stayed quiet. I sat there, watching stories that didn't speak to me, just to avoid making waves, just to be easy. It might sound small. From the outside, these aren't dramatic things. No one yelled, no one forced me. But that's the part that hurts more. When you lose your space, your choices, your voice, not by force, but by omission, by being gently guided out of your own life, one decision at a time. And little by little, I started to disappear, not physically, but the woman I was, the one with her quirks and routines and strong opinions, she started to fade. I'd catch glimpses of her sometimes, in a mirror or a memory, and wonder where she went. Wonder when I stopped being her and started being someone else's version of acceptable. There's a kind of loneliness in being surrounded by people who care for you, but don't truly see you. It's like living inside a house built for someone else, where every room feels a little too tight or too cold. You try to adapt, to make yourself smaller, quieter. You say, "It's fine," when it's not. You nod, even when your heart disagrees, and over time, you forget what it feels like to be fully you. That's what this loss of identity feels like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not something others notice, but you feel it in your bones. You feel it when you wake up and realize there's nothing in the day that belongs to you. You feel it when your reflection looks like a stranger who's learned to smile politely and disappear when needed. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because behind every small helpful gesture, there might be a story of slow erasure that no one is talking about. Comment below. I'm still here, and I matter. And maybe what they never truly saw was that all I ever wanted, was to still be me. Not the version they had in their heads. Not the role they needed me to play. Just me. With my laugh that sometimes comes too loud, my way of telling stories that go in circles, my habit of singing to myself while I cook. Those little things may seem silly, but they are my colors, my rhythm, my language. And it hurts when the people you love most try to edit you like a page in a book, scratching out parts as if they were mistakes. I remember one afternoon, I was sitting alone in my room, looking at an old photo of myself, younger, smiling, bold. I had just come back from a trip to the city, something simple I had planned for myself. Nothing big, just a bus ride, a bookstore, and a little cafe I used to love. And when I told my son, expecting a curious smile, I saw disappointment in his eyes. He said, "Why would you do that alone? You didn't even tell me." But it wasn't worry I heard, it was control. Like I was a child sneaking out, but I wasn't, I'm still not. I'm his mother, not his dependent. I just wanted a day that was mine. And that was the moment I understood the truth that had been sitting quietly in the corners of my heart. I wasn't asking for permission. I was claiming my place again, my decisions, my time, my silence and my laughter, my own life, because that's what freedom really is. Not rebellion, not selfishness, but the gentle, powerful act of remembering yourself. Freedom isn't ego, it's respect, and it starts inside with the courage to look in the mirror and say, "I still matter. I still belong. I'm still here." Somewhere along the way, the narrative got twisted. They started believing that growing older meant disappearing, that a mother's desires should shrink to match the size of a quiet house, that independence is a threat. But it's not. It's beauty. It's proof that love raised someone strong enough to fly, and someone wise enough to keep walking. And I'm not ashamed to say that I still dream. I still want to travel, to write, to fall in love again, maybe. Or maybe just to plant more flowers in the backyard. It doesn't have to be big to be mine, and I don't need permission to exist fully. I just need air, space, and truth. I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be seen. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what's at stake here isn't just my story. It's the way we look at aging, the way we define love, and the way we allow others to shape our narrative. Write this in the comments. Freedom is not selfishness. And now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because something began to stir in me when I started to imagine the roles reversed. What if it were him, my son, who decided to live on his own, to take control of his life, to make choices that made sense only to him? What if he wanted to travel alone, or move to another city, or simply say, I need space, I need time for me? Would anyone dare to look at him and say, you're being selfish? Would anyone try to guilt him with phrases like, after all I did for you, now you're just thinking about yourself? No, people would probably call him brave, independent, mature. They'd say, he's living his truth, finding himself, taking control of his destiny. And that contrast hit me hard, because when I tried to do those exact same things, not to abandon anyone, but to stay alive inside of me, to continue being who I am beyond the role of mother, I was called selfish, not just with words, but with silences, with looks, with those passive comments that make you doubt your very heart. But why is it that when a man or a young person claims their space, it's called growth, but when a woman, a mother, especially one who's aging, does the same, it's betrayal? The truth is, we carry invisible scripts about what a good mother should do, how she should behave, how she should fade softly into the background once her children grow. But no one ever asked if we wanted to fade. No one ever gave us a space to just be. And when we try to rewrite those scripts, when we dare to say, I'm still becoming, we face resistance that feels like rejection. I started to wonder, what kind of love have we been taught to accept? The one that protects, or the one that sees us fully? The one that says, I'll take care of you, or the one that asks, who are you now, and what do you need? Because sometimes, care is just another way of control, disguised in the language of affection. I wasn't trying to erase the years I spent raising my children. Those years are sacred to me. I was simply trying to claim the ones I still have left, to honor the woman I was before I became a mother and the one I'm becoming now, with all my stories, my scars, and my spark. But that doesn't fit into the roles they created for me. And maybe that's the real conflict. So I ask again, if this were your son, or your daughter, would you call it selfishness, or would you call it courage? Would you say they're choosing themselves because they don't love you, or because they finally love themselves enough to live freely? That shift in perspective, it's uncomfortable. It shakes what we think we know about duty, love, family. But sometimes, it's in those uncomfortable places that the truth begins to show. And when it does, it demands a new kind of honesty. One that starts by recognizing that freedom is not a threat, it's not abandonment, it's not a lack of gratitude, it's simply the desire to live fully, before time steals that chance away. And I believe that every person, especially those who have given so much of themselves, deserves that chance, not to start over, but to keep going, with dignity, with purpose, with joy. And maybe that's what this whole journey has taught me more than anything else. There is no true love without respect. There is no genuine connection when one has to disappear for the other to feel comfortable. I spent so long trying to be smaller, quieter, easier to manage. But the truth is, I was never meant to disappear. I was meant to evolve, yes, to grow and adapt, but never to vanish into the background of my own life. There were moments when I doubted everything. I wondered if I was asking for too much just by wanting space to breathe, to decide, to feel like myself again. I wondered if it was wrong to expect autonomy after a lifetime of giving. But deep down, I knew that even the most well-intentioned care can turn into something that slowly erases a person when it's not balanced with empathy, when protection forgets to listen, when love forgets to ask. And I started thinking, maybe it's not just about me. Maybe this is something bigger. A transformation that so many people go through in silence. A journey where parents lose their voice in the name of peace, where aging feels like surrender, and where gratitude becomes a mask for grief. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is another path. One where we walk alongside each other, not in front or behind. Where decisions are shared, not dictated. Where the wisdom of age meets the energy of youth in a space of mutual respect. I still believe in that possibility. In rebuilding from honesty. In the kind of conversation where no one has to shout because both hearts are open. Where I can say, I'm still me, and hear back, I see you. That's all I've ever wanted. Not permission, not approval, just to be seen as I am, with my quirks, my memories, my need for independence. Because growing old should never mean becoming invisible, and being cared for shouldn't cost your identity. That shift, I think, starts with the smallest gesture, a conversation. One where we don't come armed with defenses, but with curiosity. One where both sides dare to be vulnerable, to admit they were hurt, confused, scared. That's where the real healing begins. Not in silence, not in sacrifice, but in truth, in hearing each other not to respond, but to understand. I know not every story will be like mine. Some will be harder. Some will need time. But if there's one thing I hope this message carries, it's that reconciliation is not only possible, it's powerful. It's not about going back to how things were. It's about creating something new. A bond reimagined through maturity, respect, and emotional truth. Because yes, we all change, but no one should have to erase themselves to be loved. So if you've made it this far with me, thank you. Truly, it means the world that you've listened. And if any part of my story touched something in you, maybe something you've lived or something you're still trying to understand, I'd love to hear from you. Write down here in the comments. I'm on that journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this. And maybe, after all these words, you're sitting there remembering your own mother. Or maybe you are that mother. That woman who once gave up dreams, time, energy, everything, for her children. That woman who still carries strength in her bones and tenderness in her voice, even when her choices are questioned, even when her needs are dismissed. I'm not here to blame, just to open space for something we rarely fathom: the right to continue being ourselves, even after a certain age, even when we become the mother of, or the grandmother, or the one who cooks on Sundays. There's more to us than just the role we played, and no role should erase our essence. Respect is not just about saying thank you for what was done in the past. It's about listening in the present. It's about asking instead of assuming. It's about letting someone breathe without fear of being misunderstood. Because love, real love, doesn't demand disappearance. It doesn't ask for silence as a condition for care. Love walks beside us. It doesn't take the lead and drag us along. And if you got here, if this story stirred something inside of you, even if it's a quiet memory or a question you never dared to ask, I want to invite you to write something in the comments. Just to break the silence that keeps too many of us apart. Right? Wanting freedom is not selfish. Because it isn't. It's human. It's real. It's necessary. And if this story touched you, even if just a little, leave a like. Not just for me, but to help more people hear voices like ours. Stories that matter. Stories that heal. And if you want to keep walking with me through these conversations that dig deep and shine a light where it hurts, subscribe. There's still so much we need to say, together.